All right, so as I pull over the side of the road, take myself a little 10-100, I decided to make a little video for you guys. There's a lot of dummies out there when it comes to buying a car. Here's a Charger I just acquired, just bought it. Now, there's some things I'm going to talk to you about, and if you fall into that category, I mean, you may be a dummy. I'm trying to undumbify you. So, just kind of listen up a little bit. Now, there's a lot of Chargers on the market. There's been a lot that have popped up recently. Actually, there has been for sale for quite a while. You know, the guys will say, oh, I can't find one, I can't find one. You're not really looking. I mean, if you look on Facebook, Craigslist, eBay, the KSL, which is the Utah, I mean, every state has their own like individual like classifieds website. There's a lot of these things on the market. Marketplace is a good place. Even just word of mouth. I mean, they're out there. Now, some guys that where they fall into the dummy category is they see a Charger and they see a cheap price and like, oh, that's a screaming deal. No, dummy fault. So before you assume that car is a good deal, you need to look at that car. Because, all right, here. So with this car here, if this was a 100% complete car, it's not, but let's just say it was. See, it don't have any interior. These seats aren't the correct seats. I don't even know what they look like. They're just sitting in it. Oh, I know you want to. Hold on, before we start class, I got to show you this. I'm actually really glad that this steering wheel was on this car, because I'm gonna build a blown ratty Daytona, kind of like Joe Dirt, but my style. Big old 871 blower, side pipes, all that cool stuff. And I got my steering wheel. This thing is so stupid, it's so ugly, but it'll fit it. So I'm kind of glad that's on there. Anyways, back to school. All right, so you're looking at buying a Charger. You see a screaming deal on the internet, and you're just thinking, wow, that is a smoking deal. I gotta buy that now. Now, before you go off and spend some money, realize too that there is a lot of scams out there. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Now, if the guy's only a couple hours away and you tell the guy, hey, I can show up with cash in just a couple hours and buy the thing, and he tells you, oh, we need to make a deposit first. That's a red flag. If he's wanting you to make a deposit and you can be there in a couple hours, most likely it's a scam and you're gonna lose your money. And I've got some friends, and they follow me on here, that have lost a lot of money. You know, I don't want to say his name, but he knows who he is. Not his fault either. He actually did what he was supposed to do when going to buy a car, but it's just he got scammed by a good scammer. Let me switch hands here. Hand gets a little tired. All right. So, guy says, okay, you can come and look at it. Actually, you know what? We'll stick to the internet thing. Now, I have tried selling cars, and I've got a buddy that's selling a 68 Charger right now. It's actually a really solid car. It's almost 100% complete. The only thing it's missing is really the drivetrain and the drive shaft, and maybe a few little trinkets, but nothing expensive. I mean, pretty much all of the main components are accounted for, but the car's all apart. But someone had gone through the work, stripped the car, took it down, had it blasted, and then they epoxied the car. So the car is a blasted, epoxied, rolling shell, and all the parts are in boxes. Now, a lot of people look at that and they go, ugh, you know, I don't want that. You know, they just can't visualize the car. Well, you got to stop doing that, because you're missing out. You know, because I've seen a lot of people that shied away at his car, but then they see a rotted pile of shit. But because it's, you know, assembled, they think they want to buy that. And I'm like, what? And so, no, dummies, don't do that. You want to stick with a car. A car that's all apart, you can see it. You can lay all the parts out on the ground, and you can look at them and see if they're good or not. Because a car that's assembled, you can't really see all of it. Pretty much most of the gauge clusters are all junk. You got to restore them all. A lot of the window regulator hardware, all that stuff's all got to get rebuilt. I mean, a lot of the car if it's an assembled, unrestored, rusty car, most of it's junk. I mean, I've torn a lot of these cars apart. Most of it's junk. So, yeah, the car's assembled, but you're gonna have to take the thing apart anyways, and then you have to get it blasted, and then you have to spend the money to get it epoxied or primered, whichever one you want to do. Sealer. Ooh, my sideburns are getting all bushy. But so I'm just trying to let some of these guys know, if you see a car that's all apart, that's not a bad thing. I mean, it's actually a good thing, because you can see the car. Now, some people will go, well, yeah, but I don't know what would be all missing. I don't know what's there, or what's supposed to be there, or what's gone. That is true. Okay, if you're a rookie at these cars, and you probably want to see the car too, yeah. So if you're a rookie at these cars, and you might not know everything that's missing, but pretty much just look at the main components. I mean, is the grille, even the suspension. I mean, it doesn't, granted you want suspension so it can roll, but all the suspension is going to be junk. A 50-year-old unrestored car, junk suspension. So engine, okay, some guys, they won't buy the car unless it runs. It's a 50-year-old engine. If it ran, it ain't gonna run very long. I know some pretty dirty flippers out there that they rattle can the engines, and then on eBay they call them restored. They're out there, trust me. Now these engines, they're junk. They're 50-year-old. I mean, they got 50-year-old piston rings, they got 50-year-old bearings, the valve springs. I mean, the valve jobs are junk. I mean, the cams are flat, the oil pumps are wore out. They're junk. I mean, it's good that it has an engine, so you'll have something to start with. All right, now let me switch hands again. There we go. I like my right side better anyway. That's my better side. I got a better profile. All right, now, okay, we've established that cars that are all apart are not a bad buy. They're actually a good buy. Now, if the car's got an engine and it runs, who gives a shit? It's probably junk anyway. You know, the guys that say it's rebuilt, really look at that engine, because degreaser and rattle can and a couple little new parts on the engine, it'll look like a rebuilt engine, but they're not. Okay, rusty cars. Now, let's say this car here, I'm not even gonna say how much I paid for this car, because last time I said how much I paid for a car, there was a bunch of people that commented saying, oh, you're a freaking idiot, you paid that much money for that car. But I didn't really give a shit. It was a triple black 69 RT 4-speed Dana car that was all numbers matching. I wanted that car. I didn't care. I mean, yeah, I cared a little bit about the price, but it's mine now. I have it. And I've gotten cars for free, and I got bitched about on those. So it's best just, you know what, not even say a price. That's why a lot of guys don't say prices, because no, you cannot please everybody. And I've noticed that having a YouTube channel, you cannot please everyone. Crap, where was I at? Okay, this car here. Let's say this car was rusty, but it was complete. Now, okay, most rusty Chargers, they need quarters, wheelhouses, trunk extensions, trunk pans. So most of the time the tail panels are okay, but they'll need the rear valence, the valence corners, and usually the back windows, you can kind of repair those. But if it needs all that work and it needs lower quarter work, you might as well just put a full quarter panel on it and just save yourself some time, and it'll look better. Now, all that stuff ain't cheap. This is not cheap. So, and it's a lot of work. So you may have saved a few bucks because it's a rusty car, but you are going to spend a lot more money in the long run to get that car to where it would have been if you just saved a few dollars and bought a solid car. One that maybe just needed to me, a solid Charger is, most Chargers always need a trunk pan. Most of them always do. But if you have a Charger that just needs the center piece of the trunk, you can graft that in. You can butt weld it, or you can just overlap it. I mean, either way. I mean, if you want to butt weld to make it look nicer, but so trunk, the center of the trunk, and lower quarter panels, and you know, maybe some pinholes and a little bit of holes on the valence as your light rust car, which those aren't bad. Those are easy repairs. A lot of times you can just patch that stuff, and then you'll just buy a trunk pan and then cut the center out and weld that in, because to do a trunk pan is a big job. I mean, there's a lot of spot welds on those things. So the guys that are only seeing the dollar signs, you need to take account of all the work and all the parts or all the metal you're gonna have to buy to get that car to where it needs to be. Let's see, what else? All right, I'm just gonna kind of bounce around a little bit on ideas here, but let me run something else by you. Is when you're buying a charger, make sure it has most of the main components, because the big components for a charger are expensive. So you always want to make sure you have a grill. The grills are pricey. The engine, don't even. Now, a lot of guys have to have a numbers matching motor. Here's the thing about numbers matching. It's just stamped into the block. You know how many fake numbers matching cars are out there now? All they do is they mill that down and they re-stamp the numbers into the block. You can actually rent those dies to re-stamp that block, and you will fool everyone, so people will think it's numbers matching and get that bigger price tag. There's guys gonna hate me for saying that, but it's true. Corvette guys do it all the time. Camaro guys do it all the time. It's out there. So numbers matching, you're gonna pay more money for a numbers matching car. Does it really matter to you that much that it's numbers matching, or does it just have to have a good engine in it? So just food for thought. Think about that. And as for big blocks are not that pricey. You can get these things. This is a 383 here. It's a 383 4-barrel. You can usually buy a 383 4-barrel for $500 with the transmission. I mean, they're not that expensive. See, this is a 22-inch radiator car. For you guys that live in the desert, try and find a 26-inch radiator car like me. Really not a big deal. If you want to make a 26-inch, you just cut this out, or you can cut this and slide this whole piece over and weld it back in, or just cut it and drill new holes to the radiator. It just depends on how correct you want to be. I mean, you want to have an OEM restoration type car, or you just want to have a fun car. You can go to car shows and do what you want to do with it. Okay, so grill. The suspension, not a big deal. You want to make sure it has a dash in it and the correct front seats, because original Charger bucket seats, Roadrunner, whatever, they're not cheap. Gauge cluster, one thing about the gauge cluster, it can be there and the whole thing be entirely junk. So usually the dimmer switches are junk. The voltage regulators in the back of the cluster, sometimes they're junk, sometimes they're good, but it's a mechanical one. Usually I always upgrade to the electronic one anyway, a solid state. Okay, most of the plastics, yeah, the plastics can be there, but the plastics can be junk. But if they're there, you can just walnut blast them, spray some Rust-Oleum black over it, and then they have that Molotow chrome ink pen, which standing outside the car and looking in, you can't tell that it's not chromed. I mean, it looks that good. Let's see. So as long as the plastics are there, because the plastics for a Charger are $550. So you don't want to have to buy those. That's just the dash plastics. Another thing that's expensive, actually, just make sure everything on the dash is there. But gauge cluster wise, really look at the gauge cluster and make sure that it's usable. Because if it's not, it's almost cheaper just to buy another one off eBay or Craigslist, or hardly anybody ever sells anything on Craigslist anymore. Facebook. What else we got to look at inside the car? Okay, you want to make sure you have your pedal assemblies, and if it's a 4-speed car, make sure your pedal assembly's there, because those ain't cheap either. The glass, I can tell you right now, repop glass sucks. It sucks. All right, the only thing that's good is the front glass. The back glass is okay. It's a tiny bit smaller than original. The side glass, garbage. All the repop glass, it will not go up and down in the tracks correctly, because it's either bowed too much this way or too much this way. We had 3 different companies, they all suck. So if you have your original glass, you can get it sanded and polished to where it'll get rid of all the fine scratches in it. And the reason they get fine scratches in them is because they just had cat whiskers in there. And the cat whiskers wear away, and then what you're left with is these little metal tangs that just eat at the glass. So as long as there's not any deep scratches, they can polish all that out. So glass is a big thing, and make sure it has a back glass, because the back glass on a Charger is over $300. Mine's missing, but luckily it's in the truck, so I do have it. Taillights. Taillights are pricey for a Charger. They are, so make sure it has taillights. My taillights are inside the trunk. And also bumper brackets. The little bumper bracket that holds the rear bumper right there, those ain't cheap. Those are, I think they're about 200 bucks. And then the front bumper, make sure you have the front bumper brackets. And also, if somebody has done metal work to the car, look at it. Make sure you're not gonna have to take it all back apart and re-weld it. This car here, it's had metal work done to it. It's had quarter panels, trunk pan, rear valence corners done to it, and they did an okay job. I mean, it's not to my level of what I would want done, but it's okay. It's passable. I'm gonna have to go back through and do a couple things, and the reason I got this car is I was really looking for a 69, but this 68 popped up, and it was cheap enough to where I could afford to buy it and convert it to a 69, because I'm building another gen release so I can start renting it out in Vegas. So that's why I got this car. Because all the other 69s I have at home, they're either too sentimental to me the way they are, or they're an RT. This is just a 318 car, but it's got a big block in it. Another thing too, this car just has an 8 1/4 wussy little axle in it. Now, if you're gonna put a big block in a car and you plan on making any kind of remote power, I mean over 400 horse, big blocks make torque. They'll break these dinky little toothpicks. So always look for an 8 3/4. If it's got an 8 3/4, it'll survive. Okay, stuff my teeth? No, I'm fine. Now, 8 3/4 doesn't have the differential cover on it. It's just a solid rear end housing, and then the pumpkin comes out the front. Let's see. Gas tank. Don't buy a car because it's got a gas tank in it, because they're junk. And most of the fuel lines are going to be junk. Most of all the brake lines are going to be junk. Most of all the brakes are going to be junk. And most of the time they had drum brakes. Little 10-inch drum brakes is what most cars had. Do you really want that? Do you really matter if it has the brakes? So just keep that in mind, because you're most likely going to upgrade the brakes anyway. Immersion brake cables, they're always junk. It's a 50-year-old piece that's underneath the car. If you back east, guys, 100% junk all the time. Salt gets in there. Ooh, this was a turquoise hinge. So somewhere a turquoise B body died, so this car could get a hinge. And it's got a B5 blue, or no, that's B3 blue hood. The car is originally avocado shit green. It ain't nothing special about this. Really nothing special about this car. 318 automatic on the column, heater only car, which I kind of like those because in the firewall is cleaner. You don't have all that AC crap there. Now another thing to look for is you got a 2 or 3 speed wiper. I don't really care 2 or 3 speed. I mean, because how often are you going to be driving the car in the rain anyway? But if it has a 3 speed wiper, kind of make sure you have a 3 speed switch, because that stuff can get expensive when you're trying to track it down. And radiators, don't care if it's got a radiator in it. They're junk. I mean, a lot of guys say, oh, the brass radiator's cooled so much better. Bullshit. The modern aluminum, really wide 2-core radiators work best. Let's see. Now, see, this used to be a turn signal car. Those are missing. It's like 200 bucks to replace that. Most of all your hoses and a lot of the wiring in these cars. Now, dash harness. Most of the time, the dash harnesses are good. This car has had the dash harness ripped out of it. Someone stole it, or didn't steal it. I mean, this car sat in a field for quite a while. Now, dash harnesses, they're like 500 bucks for, a good restored dash harness. You can buy the aftermarket harnesses. Those work good too. But if it has a dash harness in it, most of the time you can kind of splice or fix some little tiny wires or all that. But if you look underneath the dash and it's just a cobbled disaster of cut and spliced and trailer lock wires, just rip it out and replace it. But yeah, back to the dummy part of this is, don't judge a book by its cover. Just because you see a complete car, that thing could be a rotted piece of shit underneath that lipstick. So if it needs front frame rails, rear frame rails, floors, rockers, all that, I mean, if it needs all that metal, but you got a, you know, decent deal on it, in the long run, you're going to get shafted. So look for that. Unless it's like a special car. If it's like a super rare RT or a sunroof car or something like that, you know, then it's a different category. But if it's just your basic run-of-the-mill Charger like this, you know, look for that stuff. And don't be afraid of cars that are all apart. In my eyes, they're better. I can see the parts, and there's nothing to really hide. The car's already been blasted, or it's all apart where you can see everything. You know, a lot of times the guys will smother the cars in Bondo and black primer to kind of hide stuff. Now, I've seen all these Craigslist ad, eBay ads, and usually you can tell right off the bat when someone is pulling some shiesty shit. I mean, they've got lipstick on a pig. Now, if you're looking at certain areas of the car and it's all rusty and brown underneath and all that, but the outside of the car is all satin black, what are they hiding? Because there's no reason somebody's gonna go through and paint the whole car satin black when it's not a finished paint job. There's no bodywork done to it. No, they're just hiding stuff. They smothered some Bondo around it and just bombed it with black paint. Because in the pictures, satin black hides a lot. Or primer. Primer hides more than satin black. So if you see a car that's all in primer, but the floors are rotted out in it and the trunk pan's rotted out in it, just kind of go, all right, where are we at now? So we talked about the rusty cars. Make sure you look at those. We talked about the cars that are all apart, which is actually a good thing. I mean, granted, yes, I have tried to sell those before, and they are a little harder to sell because people can't visualize the car assembled. And I know that people that haven't dealt with these cars a lot, it's hard for them to visualize it, but try and get past that, because you actually will get a better deal sometimes doing that. Let's see. Okay, we talked a little about this hoopty and what I'm doing with it. Yep, I did get an extra door. The door ain't worth a shit, but all I'm going to do with it is bomb it orange, put an 01 on it, and then gouge the scratches back out in it so it looks like kind of a ratty generally door, and I'll throw it in the front yard. I kind of like yard art. Let's see. Let me switch my hands over here again, do some magic. All right, well, I hope I undummified some of you guys. I'm not trying to be mean, I'm actually just trying to joke with you guys. But also educate you at the same time, because there's a lot of good cars out there that are apart and people just can't visualize them. And there's a lot of guys that buy rusty junk because they see the cheap price tag. And on Facebook, I see it a lot. The guy had this complete Charger for 10 grand. Everybody's going, oh, it's a smoking deal. That's going to be gone in 5 minutes. And then some dummy will buy it because they don't know what to look for. Make sure you ask for pictures. Look at frame rails, trunk pans, rockers. And ask for pictures of multiple areas, because there's guys that can do, actually, I'll show you right here. I see this all the time on eBay. You'll ask for a rear frame rail picture, and let's send you a picture just like this. You know, a lot of guys know what I'm talking about, because the middle part of the frame rail isn't what rots out usually. It's all back here. So they'll take a picture from the back looking forward, and you'll be like, oh, that doesn't look that bad. And then you get the car and you're like, oh crap. Same thing. So there's a lot of guys that take pictures in shiesty areas and how they hide stuff. So just kind of look out for some stuff like that. You know, don't jump on a car because you see a cheap price tag. And I see a lot of younger guys, I get messages all the time. Hey, do you have a cheap Charger for sale? That is the completely wrong answer, or wrong way to ask somebody. Cheap Charger, you're going to get stuck with the biggest piece of shit ever. So don't do that. Save your money and buy a better car. And, you know, if I found a car and it was cheap, I spend a lot of time, I didn't come about finding a bunch of cars and knowing where these cars are at overnight. A lot of guys will complain, oh, well, you know where all these cars are at, and you've got all the Chargers. I don't. I have 15 Chargers right now. I have a friend that has 123 Chargers alone. Not going to say who he is, but he has that many, plus Cudas and Challengers and GTXs. And so if you're a little shy about buying a car that's a decent deal on the internet, you got to remember there's a lot of other people right behind you that are going to snatch that. So just keep that in mind. I think I've rambled on enough. I've already done my 10-100. I'm good to go. I'm gonna head on to Vegas. So I hope I undummified some people, maybe entertained a few. And now I need to get my ass back to Vegas so I can get to work. See ya. Well, another thing I forgot, just as I was about ready to pull away, is the stainless for a Charger. Make sure all the stainless is there because it's not cheap. The front stainless isn't too bad. You can usually get that stuff used pretty cheap if it's missing, because all B bodies have the same front glass stainless. Unless it's a 4-door, then it's different. What's expensive is the back stainless. That is pricey. So make sure that is there. And don't, I can tell you right now, do not buy repop stainless that goes around the windows, because it's not stainless. It's freaking aluminum that's polished. It is garbage. I don't know how they can get away with selling that crap to us. And a lot of the rubbers that they sell for these cars, it's garbage. But yeah, that stainless they advertise for the back window and the front glass on like Classic Industries, it's not stainless, it's aluminum. It's just polished aluminum. It doesn't have the same reflection. And just trying to push it in place to get the clips to lock, you'll dent it because it's just aluminum. It's not stainless. Another thing, if it's a vinyl top car, make sure your check marks are here. Those ain't cheap either. One of the most expensive pieces of stainless on a Charger is also right here, the belt molding. All Chargers have belt molding. If it's not there, look at spending around $400 just to replace the 4 pieces of belt molding. They're expensive. Let's see. Oh yeah, for 68 Chargers, which is what this is, there's a trim that goes around the tail panel. Make sure that's there. It's not too expensive, but it's always better to have the original stuff. I've done a lot of that repop stuff. A lot of the repop stuff is just garbage. Of course, I have had some repop stuff that was really good. Actually, one thing I will give one endorsement on some repop stuff that does fit. And a lot of them do fit good. I just can't. This is the one that sticks out of my head. It fitting really good. The quarter panel extension. This piece that goes right here. The repops of those fit really well. If it didn't fit well, that's because you didn't do the quarter panel right. Because I've stuck those on original quarter panel cars and they fit mint. So those do fit good. Now, re-chrome bumpers, they look good from a distance, but they are far from original chrome. If you want to get your bumpers chromed back to like the real chrome, it's expensive. It's like $500 a bumper. And plus you got to find a chrome shop that can do it. But the original bumpers, getting them re-chromed is the best look you will get. The Chinese repop bumpers, it's hazy and it does not last very long. Let's see, what other stainless are we missed? Do I need to warn you about? Let's see. Well, side mirrors. Oh, the stainless inside the car and the aluminum trim inside the car. You know, on the door panels. Just make sure most of the stainless is there. And one thing I do need to warn you too is when I said you want to make sure the whole dash is there, is all the pads on a rally dash are not cheap. The upper dash pad, they're like over $400 now. The lower dash pads, expensive. The glove box, I mean, ooh, you know what? These ones look pretty good. Oh wait, it's missing the glove box. At least I have an extra one of those. And seat belts. If the car is missing seat belts, don't care, because they're 50-year-old seat belts. Just buy some new seat belts. They're going to be expensive, but just get new seat belts. You can get the cheapo ones, but if you want like an OE kind of like restored seat belt that has the this might be upside down, but there's a tag right there and there. You can buy seatbelts that are like $600 that'll put, I'll put all those tags back on them and they'll look correct colors and all that crap. If it's a 69, kind of look, see if it has the key ignition, because a 69 lock cylinder or the ignition is a little pricey. It's more expensive than 68. Well, I guess that's it for now. Well, I guess I can do a quick walk around this thing, show you. I'll even hush up. I like it. Came from an Indian reservation in Idaho. Well, now it's time to go. See ya. Ah, psych, it's me again. Forgot something else. So yeah, the Chargers have one of the most expensive interiors to do. They have the upper door panels that go right here. If those are missing, or if they're just totally shot, those are like $900 to replace all four. Door panels for a Charger, okay, it's a 50-year-old car, and it's a cardboard door panel. By chance, if you get a car that does have good door panels on it, you just saved yourself like $900 to $1,000. Also, the upper pads, a lot of times those will be hard, but they're not that cheap either, and you have to dye them. Consoles. If your console's got a crack in it, it's not the end of the world. Just, fix the crack. If it's missing, if you're missing an entire console and you buy all the parts to replace it new, or to build one, you're looking at like $1,400. You can find used consoles for around $500-600 for a good one. So just keep that in mind. Original seats and seat tracks. I think I said that already, but seat tracks are expensive, and the front seats are stupid expensive if you have to go buy them new. If you buy new seat tracks with the foam and the upholstery and all that crap, it's really expensive. Let's see. If you got a wood grain wheel, if the wood grain on that wheel is actually in pretty decent shape, you save yourself quite a bit of money. The repop wood grain wheels, they suck. The wood grain is not even remotely close to what it used to be, and it's painted on, and it has like a quarter of the wood grain that it should have, and it's chrome. It's not like a brushed look. So the repop wood grain wheels suck. Radios, I wouldn't worry too much about the radios. I mean, you can buy used radios cheap, so don't even care. Back seats, those are usually pretty cheap. If it's missing the back seat, not the end of the world. Make sure it has the front seat though. Buddy seats, if it's missing this, if it's not a console car and it's missing the buddy seat, it's not the end of the world either. Those are pretty cheap because they're out there and a lot of guys don't run them. I've sold really nice ones for $150. So yes, interior wise, Chargers are expensive. So yeah, just try and make sure it has as much of the interior as possible, but also make sure it's good or usable, because it could all be there and it all be junk, which doesn't do you any good. So, all right, you may see me again, you may not. So, see ya. Haha, I told you you'd see me again. Just remembered something else. Keep all of your original hardware. Just when you're taking the car apart, just bag it all, and so you know where it came from, because a lot of the restoration nut and bolt kits that you buy for a car or a Charger are not correct. They are not the right type of screw. They don't fit right. They're too long, or the head's too big. So if you can, try and use a lot of the original screws. You can send them out and get them replated, chromed, or whatever. So keep that in mind too. All right, this may be the last time. I don't have any information for you this time. I just got cookies and want to rub it in. They're soft and warm. They've been sitting in the sun. Chocolate chip too. I got cookies, you don't. All right, I'm done rubbing it in.